First Rinpoche says that we should listen to Dharma teachings with the motivation of the bodhicitta, meaning that we should think that we are going to listen to the teachings of the profound Dharma in order to bring all beings throughout space to the level of Buddhahood. And the first Rinpoche says that he's very happy to arrive here in this country, in England, and to see all the Dharma practitioners here. So in our world there will appear 1,000 Buddhas, and so of these 1,000 Buddhas, that there has appeared the first Buddha called Krakuchanda, and the second Buddha Kanata Muni, and the third Buddha Kashyapa, and Shakyamuni Buddha is the fourth Buddha, and his teachings are still existing. So, due to our accumulation of good karma in previous existences, and due to making a connection with the Buddha and Dharma and the Sangha in previous existence, and due to the blessing of the Guru and the teachings, we have now been reborn in this wonderful existence, a wonderful life, in a place where the Dharma teachings have spread, and where there are the very excellent, fortunate conditions of people who can teach the Dharma, and where people are practicing them. And so when one says Dharma, this is a word that can have many meanings, but the Dharma is something which is to protect and give refuge to beings. That the main meaning when we say the Dharma is the Dharma of the Buddha, which can bring benefit to us in this lifetime and in our future lifetimes. So, all our activities for this lifetime to make our life happy and benefit ourselves, this is called worldly Dharma. So this worldly Dharma is something which is studied everywhere in the world, south, north, east, west, and it's something which is being able to be used in a very wonderful way to benefit all of the people of all the different countries. And in particular that in the past that England or Britain, that it ruled most of the world, that a lot of the countries in the world were under its power, but by its voluntarily, by its own volition, that it gave the independence to all these different countries, aid and independence to them, so that creating very happy, fortunate conditions for the world. And so particularly in Britain, there's still excellent conditions of education, learning, and science, and also in terms of leaders of the country, the government, and so on. The political system is something very beneficial for the people. It's and amongst all countries, it's an exceptionally excellent one. And in the world there are many different kinds of religions, and so all of these religions are something to benefit beings and to help them for this life and in the future life, or to be able to bring them to state of the bodhisattvas or Buddhas. And so all of these religions are there with the purpose to prevent beings from going to the lower existences. So they are the same in that quality. And so people, that they're able to do whatever they wish, to practice whatever they want. They have the freedom to do that. So there's no one who is going to is stopping people from following any religious practice that they wish to. And so everyone is free to follow their own path, and this is something very wonderful. And in particular the London. And also in particular, due to the kindness of the tulkus and lamas, that there's been established a Dharma center in London, so that right up to the present, many lamas and tulkus have been able to be invited here and to give Dharma teachings, and so this is something very, very wonderful. For one's education, for learning, and to get a good employment, and all these things, that in the world, that the best places for this is in England, and so there's nothing that he can teach about this, but then there's no reason for him to give any teachings on this. So what Rinpoche can talk to us about is the nature of the Dharma, of the Buddha Dharma, and this is something which can benefit us both not just in this life but in the next life in terms of our ultimate achievement. Because for the activities that one does to benefit oneself in this lifetime, that this can bring one long life, wealth, health, and so on, make one so that one can have almost like divine existence. But still, it's not going to be of any help for us for after this life. And so to find happiness after this lifetime, the only thing that will benefit us for that is the practice of the Dharma. And so this will be able to benefit ourselves for our future lives, because we have to go through a number of lifetimes, is because there's no one who is able to just carry on living without dying. We all have to die. So if when we died that we just cease to exist, our mind ceased to exist, just like when a fire's gone out or some water's just dried up and there's nothing left, then there will be no need to practice the Dharma. But we don't become non-existent at that time, that the mind continues, and until we have achieved Buddhahood, we have to pass through lifetime after lifetime in samsara. So one needs to, in our next lifetime, to be able to achieve an existence, either like a human existence or divine existence, which is even better than what we have now. So this is what we must achieve. And it's been on the basis of this, an excellent existence in that way, then one can follow all the different stages or nature of the path, that of the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, to the state of Buddhahood. So we can be able to follow this path and achieve the state of Buddhahood. So, therefore, the Dharma is something that is beneficial for on the temporary stage, relative stage, and also is beneficial for in terms of the ultimate goal of achievement of Buddhahood. And so this is what the Dharma is, this is what the result of the practice of the Dharma is. So the way one can accomplish these two great aims is that, well, first of all, we have the mind, and the mind is something which is very powerful. So first we have to recognize what the mind, then we have to practice, and then finally we have to gain the attainment, definite attainment. And so if we follow through these three phases, then one will be able to attain this ultimate bliss. And so we all have the body and a speech and a mind. So these three are very important, essential things that we can't be without a body or a speech or mind. So we all have these three factors. But amongst these three, the most important is the mind. So without the mind, then there'd be there's no body. Without the mind, there'd be no speech. So the mind is the most essential. So the reason for this is that if one wants to go somewhere, first one has the thought in one's mind that one wants to go, and then one's body actually goes and moves. Or first one has in one's mind the thought, I'm going to sit down, and then the body sits down. Or one thinks first that one wants to say something unpleasant to somebody, and then having thought that, then with one's speech one actually says something unpleasant to someone. Or one wants to say something nice to someone, and on the basis of that thought in the mind, then one says something nice to somebody. So the root of all these activities is the mind. It's something that one can't do without. And so amongst the 6 kinds of existence in samsara, we have the very special existence, the precious human existence, and then in that existence, people think that there's I and there's the mind, and so there's this a grasping or attachment to the thought of oneself and one's mind. But the people don't know what the mind is. They don't know what the mind is like, or where the mind is, and they not only that, but they don't look to see whether they know what this mind is or isn't. So if we were an animal, then it would be impossible to understand the nature of one's own mind, because it's an existence in which the mind is very limited. But we have an excellent human existence, so that if we receive teachings on this from the teacher or lama, then we are able to understand this teaching. And So if we don't understand the nature of the mind, then one is in a state of ignorance or dullness. It's like being in the complete dark and firing an arrow at a target. So one has the idea, one wants to fire an arrow and hit the target, but one can't see anything, and so one could fire off 100 arrows, and maybe one or two will hit the target, but maybe they won't. So if so, like somebody firing arrows at a target in the darkness with their eyes closed, that if one tries to meditate without any understanding of the nature of the mind, is very unlikely to be able to gain any result or benefit from it. And so in India and Tibet, that a teacher would give instructions to the pupil to find out what the mind is like, or what shape, color, etc., what it's like. Then the pupil would meditate on this for days or months or over a year, and would be returning to his teacher and explaining what he's found out, and then the teacher would give him more explanations. The person would go back and meditate, and they practiced in this way. But as human beings, that we are very busy and always in a state of want, that if we don't have anything, then we think, well, I must somehow be able to get something. And even if we have a lot, then we think, well, I must get more than this. And so we're really involved with this day and night and very busy trying to acquire things, because we're always wanting to get more, always feeling dissatisfied. And so therefore we don't really have the time to spend receiving instructions with the teacher, meditating on them over a long period in that way. So as there isn't the possibility to stay for a long time receiving instructions from a teacher, this means that there is no choice but to give the instructions in an immediate way, to give something that will be immediately beneficial. So, therefore, the mind has three qualities. These three qualities together make up the mind, and so we have to know what these three qualities are. So the first of these three natures of the mind is that its essence is empty. So it's empty, just like space. There's no form, there's no shape, there's no color. It's just completely empty. So this is the first of the three natures of the mind.
Sava Sakata, Nimaka Vesina, Dai Vesina, the Retina, and Sava Sakala Maris, Sava Sakata Kansan, Datapan, Kumba, the Tomaris, Yinanum, Sava Maris, Sava Pertituma, Nasa Shet, Patum, Tonta Patiaris, that I was settled by Kalu Rinpoche, Jay Shet, Sasatiaris.
And then this empty essence that is also has the nature of clarity. And so when it says clarity, it doesn't mean like light rays or like moonbeams or something like that. But like in this building, we have empty space. But in this space, there is clarity. So we are able to see and perceive what there is in this room. So there is this clarity present. And so the clarity in, like for example, in this room, that comes due to the sun or due to the electric lights, so through interdependence with that. But for the mind, it doesn't need that kind of extra like power. The mind is just naturally has this nature of clarity. So, for example, with this clarity, it means that though we have now we arrived in this room and we are sitting here, if we think of America or India or some country, then this can appear very clearly to our mind, and so that this is like the clarity of the mind. So then one might think, well, is just emptiness and clarity itself that is the mind, but that's not so, because otherwise there's this room and there's just like the emptiness and clarity here, but that itself, it doesn't have any like power, blessing in it. That what else one needs to have for there to be mind, for it to be mind, is unimpeded or unobstructed awareness, so that one is able to perceive or understand whatever there is in the world. One can see that, well, this is the sky, this is the ground, this is this color, and this is that color, and so on. So one is able to be aware or to understand anything. So there is this unimpeded awareness or knowledge. So that one has this essence of emptiness and the nature of clarity and the kind of outer aspect or form of this unimpeded, unobstructed awareness. And so these three, if one has these three together, this is what one attaches the name mind to. This is what one calls a mind. So for the mind isn't something you can say that it's going to exist for a certain number of months or certain number of years, because its essence is emptiness, just like a space, and so it exists always unchanging, like throughout all our beginningless number of lifetimes. The mind has been there. So due to the mind, we have already in the past lived through an innumerable number of lifetimes, and in the future we'll go through an innumerable number of lifetimes. And so the one that which is responsible for our taking a life is the mind. Then one says that beings, human beings, they are born, they live, and then they die, and so why does that happen? Well, this is a delusory appearance. There is this thought of feeling that one is a human, and one is in a human body or existence, and so one is born into this life, and then in the end, these illusory appearances change, and this is like death. And at the time of death, one's mind and one's body separates. And so then one thinks, well, what is this birth and illness, aging and death? How does this arise from emptiness? Well, first, through not recognizing emptiness and through ego clinging, then there arises illusory appearances, and this is a birth. Then in that state one has unpleasant experiences, and this is illness. And then the elements, when they deteriorate, and this is aging. And then finally when the mind and the body separate, this is death. And so this occurs due to the fact that there's in the mind there's the nature of the five elements, and the five elements being earth, air, water, fire, and space. And so then one might wonder, well, how, if the mind is emptiness, how can that have this quality or nature of the five elements within it? This is something which can be explained. Because the essence of the mind, this emptiness without any shape, color, or form, this is called the element. This is the element of space. Then the mind's being existing continuously without any birth or cessation, but is always there. This is the element of water. And then this mind isn't just a state of dullness or darkness. It has clarity and the ability to understand, and this is the element of fire. And in the mind there's the different kinds of experiences of happiness and unhappiness, and all kinds of different thoughts and so on. There's a lot of change, movement in the mind, and this is the element of air. Then like the earth is something on which one grows, all things grow, and flowers and plants and trees and everything, they all develop out of the earth. And it's in the same way that from the mind, on the impure stage, there arises all different kinds of thoughts and experiences, mental negativity, mind poisons and so on. Or on the impure level, all the stages and the paths and levels towards Buddhahood. And so in this, as the mind is the basis for all of these things, it's this aspect of it is the element earth. So if one can understand this nature of the mind well, and the nature of the five elements, then this is what's called the purity, or state of purity. And at this state, one will recognize the five elements as being the five Buddha consorts, and the five skandhas, the five aggregates of one's being. These five as being the five Buddhas. So externally there exist these five elements: earth, air, fire, water and space. And so these are the five external elements. And then also within one's body there are the five elements, and so these are on the intermediate level of the five elements within one's body. And in this case the earth element is the flesh of the body, and the water element is the blood and the lymph and so on. And then the fire element is the warmth or heat of the body. The air element is the breath in the body, and the space element are all the cavities and passages within the body, and passages that the blood and lymph, etc., can move through. So these are the five elements within one's own body, the intermediate five elements. Then the inner five elements is the nature of the mind, just as Rinpoche has just described. So those are the five inner elements. So it's due to these five inner elements, the nature of the mind, that the five intermediate elements of the body have arisen. And it's then from the five intermediate elements of the body that the five external elements appear. So one arises independence on the other. And if one can understand the three qualities of the mind, emptiness, clarity, and awareness, if one can understand those, then this is the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nimanakaya. And realizing the nature of the five elements, the outer, intermediate, and inner elements, then this is then realized as being the five Buddhas and the five consorts, the 8 male bodhisattvas and 8 female bodhisattvas, and so on. So there's a lot of detail in this that can be learned. And so that when Rinpoche is only able to mention very little about this pure state at the present, so there isn't the time to be able to give a very detailed explanation to it, and there isn't it in the way that would be beneficial. So if one doesn't know the nature of the mind, then that's called the ignorance or state of ignorance. It's like if there is some kind of a thing or object, and one has never which one has never seen, then one will see, one has never seen it, one doesn't know what it's like, one doesn't know anything about it, and it's like that, this ignorance in terms of the nature of the mind. And so due to this state of fundamental ignorance, that then one is in a state of non-awareness, because now we don't know the nature of our own mind. We don't know what our previous lives were. We don't know what the future lives would be, and so we're in this state of non-awareness, which is like an aspect of this fundamental ignorance. And so from this state of ignorance appeared all of the different kinds of existence in samsara, of the hells and tormented spirits and animals, humans and asuras and devas. And so all this has been explained in great detail by the Buddha. And so we're in a human existence. So to describe about this human existence, that first of all there's been a previous life, and so when that previous life was over and that life came to an end, when he enters into the state of death, and at that time all one's senses, they all become drawn inwards or sink inwards, and one enters into a state of unconsciousness, which is the state of ignorance, which lasts for 3 days.
Send Joanna Perono,
and then when this one comes out from this unconsciousness, just like when it's just like waking out of sleep, and at that point there appear these rays of light, and he said in the Vajrayana describes that there are these rays of lights of 5 different colors, and that these lights, they originate from one's own mind. And so this only lasts for just an instant. It doesn't last for a long time. And then as this gets stronger, it develops into the 5 elements, as the sky, space, and so on, earth, and so on. And then at that point, then the mind recognizes these things. So I know what this is. This is like, this is earth, this is air, this is fire, this is water. So at that point, the mind has this like recognition of these 5 elements. Number Shipa. And then with this awareness, there comes understanding, there comes consciousness, the sense of the being then thinks, having recognized that there is space, fire, water, air, earth, then the being thinks, well, that I'm going to fall through this space, or I'm going to sink into this water, or I'm going to be burned by this fire. And so this, what is called consciousness, arises. And then at that time, being thinks that they have a form or have a body, but in actual fact they don't have a real physical form. It's called just a nominal form, just a form in name, because there's just this like consciousness, there's this experience, mental activity or recognition, but there isn't any actual solid form. So there's just there's like a nominal form. And then when this has occurred, then the being is able to see visually, to be able to hear sounds, to be able to smell, and so on, so that all of the sensory capabilities exist that are for form and sound and smell and taste and the touch of textures.
수야 번들 somado 나이 tel tratin modu somado then chop is
Then when these six sensory powers, or six we call ayatanas, when these are present, then there follows a contact. And so the contact means that, like, when one makes contact with an object, so that one sees, so there is the thought that one is seeing a form, one is experiencing a smell or a sound, and so on. And there comes the sensation of these objects. This follows from this contact. And so at this point, one is then reaching the bardo of existence, which happen. The bardo can last like 49 days. And so it can happen in 1 week or 2 weeks, but no longer than 49 days in the bardo state. And then at that point, then there appears all kinds of illusions. And so it depends on one's accumulation of karma. If one's accumulated good karma, then these illusions are pleasant ones. Or if one has accumulated bad karma, then one experiences terrifying illusions. And so at this point one still has this mental body, and so one doesn't have a physical body. So a mental body isn't obstructed by anything. So if one thinks of India, one will immediately arrive in India. If one thinks of America, one will instantly arrive in America. With this, so this mental body doesn't know any obstruction or impediment. And at this time, due to all one's tendencies from one's past life, one will think, that of oneself as being who one was in one's former life, and will think that's my country, my family, and so on. And thinking of it, one will immediately arrive there and will go up to one's family or friends to greet them and say hello and say, I've just arrived. But they don't know that you're there, and so they don't respond. Or one might have the experience. One goes to talk to them, and they turn their back on you. So one can also have that kind of unpleasant experiences. Then some beings then get very angry, or some then think, I've died, and feel really terrified and become unconscious. Very angry. Or some then think, I've died, and feel really terrified and become unconscious. And due to the attachment in the person's mind, that they'll go for their own possessions or things, and they'll think, well, this is mine now, I want to take it with me. But then somebody else will be coming and taking it away, and so then the person will try and stop it and get it back for themselves, but they have no power to do it, so then they'll get very upset or get very angry, and so lots of things like that happen. And then the person feels they can't stay where they are for any length of time, that they don't have, because they're like a bird's feather being blown about in the wind, that they just can't stay in any one place. But if a lama, one with great love and compassion, and who has kept his vows or commitments, comes to the house, and the person who has died will just naturally feel very happy and feel that they can stay in that place, and so they will be able to stay for a while, and during that time they will be able, through the Dharma, the dead person can be helped a great deal. And so that's how it has been in Tibet, and still is, that if someone has died, then a lama is invited to come to the house and to do some Dharma practice there. But there is a danger involved in this, because if they bring a lama who in fact hasn't kept his vows or his commitments, and inside he's just got a lot of anger and desire, he's not really in following the Dharma correctly, then if he comes into the house, and the dead person, the dead being there, they have clairvoyance powers in that state, and so they know what the lama is actually like on the inside, and so then they'll feel upset. They'll think, such a bad lama has come to our house, and then they'll get angry, and this can then develop a very negative view, and can cause them through the ripening of this karma, can take them down lower and lower, down to their hell existences. So, I don't know if I said before, but anyway, this is happening in the first few weeks within the bardo, within this space of the 49 days. These kinds of appearances of one's family and so on, of the past life, this happens in the first few weeks after death, and then after that they're all gradually forgotten. One forgets everything about one's past life and family, and then it's appearances related to one's future life that start to appear in the next few weeks.
코로지와라 딱 파만 통용이었더랬어. 통하면서 좋아져야 거기 쉐가였더랬어. 대신 그 세명이와라나 파들 저 마도 코로 좋아져야라나 마들 저 파들 동서 차등이 찾아내. 대리 간에 넘어서 봐. 미지 품었다. 이 간에 로에더랬어.
And when this bardo of existence or bardo of becoming comes to an end, then the being is going to take rebirth, and they're able to see their future father and mother through their clairvoyance. They can see them, know they're having sexual intercourse. And if the being is going to be reborn as a female, she will feels attachment to or longing for the father and anger towards the mother. And if the being is going to be born as a male, then he feels longing for the mother and anger towards the father. And then with this feeling of desire and anger present in the mind, then the consciousness of the dead being then enters into the womb of the mother at this point. So this is the state of becoming or conception, and this comes about through desire or longing and grasping, these two things, because there's arisen through this anger and desire, the longing to take this rebirth, and then there's the actual grasping or taking of entering into this rebirth, and then there comes the conception or the becoming, the starting of a new existence. Then the consciousness becomes completely intermixed with the red element and white element from the father and the mother, or the procreative seed or whatever, and through the consciousness and these two things merge together like milk being mixed with water, totally inseparable. And the reason why they're able to merge inseparably is that the mind has the nature of the five elements, and the procreative seed from the father and from the mother, they also have the nature of the five elements, and so therefore these three things are able to mix inseparably together. So from these, we call it 12 links of interdependent origination, 12 phases of interdependent origination, reached the point of becoming or existence, where the conception has taken place in the womb of the mother. So the reason why these bindus, or the seed from the father and the mother, have the nature of the five elements is that all the external existence is made of the 5 elements, and so a being lives for eating the food and water of the external world, which is made up of the 5 elements. And then when this has entered one's body, then after one day, like the energy or the positive part of this nutrition is transformed into blood. And then after another day, this is transformed into flesh. And then next, the energy or the vital part of that is transformed into a bone. And then the vital part of the bone, then this becomes marrow. And then from the marrow, there comes the what we call it, ovary or sperm of the father and the mother, and then from that the vital part of that becomes like the essential energy and bliss of within the mind, the energy of the body. And so there's like a channel at the navel of the child, and there's also a channel within the mother, and so these connect together in the womb. So the baby is connected to the mother in the womb by this channel at the navel, and then gradually develops over 9 months and 10 days, gradually growing into a baby. And so this whole period of development in the womb, this is also the phase called existence or becoming, from the 12 phases of interdependent origination. And after this 9 months and 10 days, then due to the power of this prana, that a certain prana, that the baby turns upside down and then exits out from the womb. And so from these 12 links of interdependent origination, there comes the next one, which is birth. So in the womb of the mother, these 5 intermediate elements that of the body have been created, and then as soon as the baby has left the mother's body, then from all the energy or vitality of those 5 intermediate elements, due to that, the baby then sees, experiences all of the external appearances. And having been born, then there will come like illness, aging and death, and all different kinds of suffering. So these things will progressively occur, birth having happened. And so impermanence is something that we can directly see or witness, that having been born, then being then with each passing minute, an hour and day, this being just naturally grows larger and larger and larger, and till it's come to full growth. And then after that, with passing of time, then being goes into a decline. This state condition gets worse and worse and worse.
children, Terila Yari, Sonny Yari, no, Mutala Yari, Tapati Sangaris. The children are taking my drawing, my yard, Tapaketi Yamaris, Tiffany Maris, the Chesapeake, the general.
And so we think of ourselves as being a human being. I am a human being, and I am a permanent, that just like a continuous flow of a river. But in fact, that if one examines closely, one can see that one is impermanent. The same as if one examines the flow of a river. There's a river there, it was there yesterday and it'll be there tomorrow. A river is always there. But if one looks at it, then the water was there but just before, it's just flown away, and there's a new lot of water coming in. And so the river is not staying the same for even a single instant. It is continuously impermanent. And it's the same for oneself as a human being. With each instant, one is changing. One is never staying the same. And so Kalu Rinpoche says, taking himself as an example. This is when he was born, when he was a little child. They say that he was a very sweet, pretty little child, and then he grew up, and apparently they say he was very handsome. And now he's grown, but now time has gone by, and now he's become a very old man of 80. And then, so in this condition of impermanence, there comes aging and death. And so in death, just as there's like a progressive development of the senses, there is this progressive absorption of the senses. One sense power merges into another. So when one dies, first one loses the powers of one's sensory faculties. So one isn't like the sense of sight goes, so one isn't able to see anything, and one's sense of hearing goes, so that if somebody talks to one, it's like hearing somebody shouting from a great distance. Then one loses sense of smell and so on. Then this way all of one's senses disappear, go into a decline. And so when these sensory faculty is completely gone, so one can't experience anything, then the elements merge into each other, so that the earth element merges into the water element merges into the fire element merges into the air element merges into consciousness, which then dissolves into emptiness. And so while this is occurring, one experiences, have all kinds of different terrifying experiences. And then, so the sense with the consciousness merging into emptiness. So when When this occurs, then the white bindu from one's father, from the time of conception, this which has been present at the top of one's head, this comes down, descends down towards one's heart. And when this occurs, there's like an experience of like bright, like moonlight, and all of the 33 kinds of thoughts or concepts of anger cease. So when this has occurred, even if there's an enemy who's killed one's father comes before one won't feel any anger. All of the power of anger has completely ceased. And then when then the red element from one's mother, which has been in one's secret area, this rises upwards, and when this occurs, one just sees like a great redness, like a great inferno, a great mass of fire. And when this occurs, the 40 thoughts of desire cease. So that if at that time even a divine male or female came before one, one wouldn't feel any desire. And then at this point, one's consciousness then goes in between the red and the white element as they come together, and then at that point, one enters into a state of unconsciousness, and the and the seven thoughts of ignorance, of non-understanding, they come to an end.
That's it, right?
And so at this time, all of the 33 thoughts, anger, 40 thoughts of desire, and the 7 thoughts of ignorance, all of these 80 different kinds of thoughts that come from the 3 main mind poisons, they all just naturally come to a stop, they cease. Then the Buddha said that then one rests in this, one is in this state of unconsciousness for about 3 days, and then when this time is over, then all of this energy from the red and white bindu is like freed. So one's consciousness just leaves the body and goes wherever it's going to go, and so at that point the mind and the body separate. And so this state of unconsciousness, it's again ignorance, again back at the beginning of these 12 links of interdependent origination, and then from this state of ignorance, then the consciousness arises again, and then one goes on to experiencing more appearances in the next lifetime and so on. And there is so these 12 links or phases of interdependent origination, they are portrayed in a circular drawing. And so the Buddha taught them in this way so that one be able to have a clear understanding of them. And so one has this inner circle, inner samsara of these 12 links of interdependent origination. So starting from ignorance, there comes mental activity and consciousness, and this nominal form, and then its sensory faculties, and then contact and sensation, and becoming, and yearning or desire, and grasping or taking, and then and then existence or becoming, then birth, and then aging and death. So this way, going around from ignorance to death. This is this wheel of or circle of samsara within oneself. So this is the inner samsara. And then one says the outer samsara, this outer cycle. Then this is through the fact that through doing good actions, accumulating good karma, one is reborn as a deity or a human, and through bad karma, one is reborn in the lower existences. Or if one is born as a human, then through good karma one has long life and happiness and so on, and through bad karma one has a short life and much suffering. And so this is this outer cycle, or outer wheel of samsara, where one is going round and round through different lives according to one's karma. So the one that causes this rebirth is the mind, and the mind only. It's not one's speech or one's body. But we're in very excellent existence. We mind where it has all these power, where it's that if one wants to, if someone says something to one is able to understand what they're saying, and one can say something. If one wants to say something to someone, one is able to do that and express what one wants. So it's a very excellent, fortunate existence. And in one's body there are the 72,000 channels or nadis within one's body, and due to this one can do whatever one wants with one's body. One can move in, dance, and do whatever one wishes due to the power of these 72,000 channels. And so the tips of the principal nadis, that they are letters or syllables, and these syllables are like the principal vowels and consonants, like these R and E, U, and the consonants in the Sanskrit alphabet, like Ka, 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 Ma, and etc. So due to that, due to the clarity of one's mind, and through the power of like the prana or air, one can say whatever it is one wants to do, and can make whatever the sound to say whatever one wishes, whether one wants to say something nice to someone, whether one wants to say something bad to someone. One has that power due to this. And so therefore we can learn to speak any language we want to. We can learn to speak French and German, Chinese, whatever it is we want. We're able to study and able to speak it because we have this power to make the sounds. So in the lower existences, they don't have that. They don't have these syllables at the tips of the channels like animals. They don't have that. So they can only. I can't do as good a bark as Rinpoche, but they only go bow wow, and they can't say anything much else. And if you're a cat, then you can only go meow. So we have a very special superior body, speech and mind. So for having this very special existence, we could then are able to study and to understand the nature of the mind, to be able to practice that, then we can go from being having an exceptional existence to an even more exceptional existence. And somebody who's a fool, who doesn't know anything about the Dharma, they'll say that there's no previous lifetimes, there's no future lifetimes, there's nothing beyond death. One can't go on to any other existence, but that's a sign of ignorance. Yes, amongst different world religions, the greatest is Christianity, and so one has in the Christ teachings, very brief set of teachings, and then in the Buddha's teachings, things are taught in a much more expanded, detailed way. And so in the teachings of Christ, he doesn't say there's no future life, but he says in brief and quite simply that if you obey the instructions of God and you do good and you don't do bad, then when you die, then you'll be go to the God's paradise, and so this is quite true. And he said that if you don't listen to what God has said, and you don't do good things but you do bad, then as a result of that you'll go to hell. So this is something which is very deep meaning, and it's taught very simply in brief. But it says clearly that there is a future, there is a life after death, and that if one does good, one will be reborn in a paradise, and if one does bad actions, one will be reborn in hell. Then, so Christ saying that there is these lower existences. It's like, as an example, would be like he's pointing out like a big a shop, in a shop, and saying, that there is that shop over there which you will go into, which you can go into. And to continue that example, then the Buddha also said there is that big shop over there, or store, and then he also adds that inside they have hats, and you have clothes, and you can buy shoes, and there's a food department and so on. So it's described. The interior is described in detail. And also that in Christ's teaching that it says if you do good actions, then you'll be reborn in paradise, as was reborn as a deity. And then the Buddha says, this is true, and that. But then he says, and then amongst that, there's classifications there, worldly paradises and paradises or states that transcend the world. So in that way the Buddha say that Christ was right in saying that one does good actions, one is reborn in a paradise, and then he explains that there are like these 6 kinds of paradises: that of the 4 great kings, the heaven of the 33, the heaven free of fighting, Tushita paradise, the heaven of emanations, and the heaven of enjoying the emanations of others. So these different levels of these paradises, each with their own different qualities and lifespans. And he also explained that above this state, beyond the desire realm of the 6 kinds of existences of samsara, then you have the formless realm with 17 different kinds of paradise, like the 4 Brahma worlds, the paradise of great Brahma and the presence of Brahma and so on, or the class of Brahma, and so on. And there's 17 different types, each with their own particular qualities, and each one having its different cause for rebirth in that state. So all this explained in detail. And then Buddha also explained that above this, or beyond this, there are the 4 formless states. One called the infinite space, one called infinite consciousness, one called nothing whatsoever, and one called neither existence or non-existence. And so he explains what these are like, what the span of life is in each one, and what the causes for being reborn there, and so on. And so Christ teaching in brief, he said if you do bad actions you'll be reborn in hell existence. And so then the Buddha teaching in detail, saying that through bad actions one will be reborn in a hell, but there are 8 hot hells, 8 cold hells, and a set of surrounding hells, and particular temporary hells, making altogether 18 different sets of hells. So in this way the Buddha described this in more detail. And then amongst the pretas, these tormented spirits, there are 4 different classes of these, like those with the outer obscuration and inner obscuration and so on. And then there are the animals, so most animals they exist in the ocean, and then there are also all the animals on dry land or exist within the human world, and the Buddha has described in detail what these different existences amongst animals and the different reasons or causes for being reborn as particular kinds of animals. And so there are many different kinds of religions all over the world, but they're all in agreement, they're all in harmony with Buddhism, and all of them are there to be practiced so that beings can be reborn in higher existences. So one might think that there should be just one teaching which would be for all people, but it can't be like that because everyone is very different, everyone has very different attitude and mentality, and so all the different kinds of teachings have been given to help all different particular kinds of beings. So if you go into the big department store in London, then you don't have just like one kind of food for everybody. You have all different kinds of food there for people, because everybody has a different taste. And so if you have all the different varieties of food, then there's something for everybody, and everybody can have something and be satisfied. So, in brief, that which makes one to take rebirth and die and so on is the mind. And the Buddha in his teachings, he said not to do any bad action, and to do as much good as one can. And so within that is also contained all of the teachings of Christianity. And the Buddha said that one should try and tame or control one's own mind, and that is the teaching of the Buddha. So in those four lines, in those 3 lines, that all of the teachings of the Buddha are condensed. So the benefit, or like peace and happiness, that comes from understanding the nature of the mind is that, for example, that as been explained, the essence of the mind is emptiness. But that if someone has a great desire or attachment or longing, and so that they're just thinking about it all the time, all day and night, and they're thinking there's no way they can get what it is they want, so they're very troubled by it. But if they, knowing the nature of the mind, they know that the essence of the mind is emptiness, and they realize that the desire, attachment itself is just arising from the mind, and that has the same essence. And so in this way, that the mind will not be troubled by that desire, attachment. It won't arise in that way. So, if one has this understanding that the essence of the mind is emptiness, then one sees that this desire or attachment is arising from the mind, and that this is just something arising from the mind, then its own essence is just emptiness. It has no real form, has no color, shape, and so on, and so and then, having realized that, then this desire attachment will just naturally become pacified. Because normally we have this belief that we think that we have a mind, this real solid mind, and we have this desire, attachment, and this itself is something real and solid. So we have this belief of clinging to things as being true, real and solid. But then through understanding the nature of the mind, this clinging to things as real and solid is just eliminated, it's destroyed.
자신도 여동이 시나 대래용 여동도 감기 때문에 사는 거야. 살도 말해서 여동도 말해서 대래서 예수가 여동도 받아 롱지지 시도야.
And it's the same for anger, that if somebody comes does something unpleasant to one, normally would think, well, he's harmed me, I must do whatever I can somehow to defeat this person or to harm that person back. But if one can then understands that when someone is experiencing an unendurable anger, but if one can understand that the essence that this anger arises from the mind, and the essence of the mind is emptiness, and so also the essence of this anger is emptiness, and so with that understanding, it just naturally by itself becomes pacified, goes away. So it's the same for pride, envy, greed, avarice, and so on, that they all arise from the mind, and their nature is emptiness. So if one can understand that all of these kleshas, all these mental negativities, all these things, forces that arise in the mind, if one can realize them as being emptiness, then they will all just naturally be pacified. And with this understanding, if one then meditates, then one's meditation is going to develop and develop more and more. And so, particularly at this time, everyone in the world is very frightened and worried with all the fighting that is going on in the world, and wondering what's going to happen. So everybody wondering how can one bring peace bring peace. And all this fighting, this arises from all this mental, all this negativity arising in the mind. And so if one has this understanding of the mind, then this negativity also will just disappear and end the fighting. So this fighting and war, it doesn't come anywhere else other than from this negativity in the mind. Like, for example, one country think they want to overpower another country and to get it for themselves. So there is this negative force of this desire, from which comes the war. And in another country, feeling anger, and being angry, then they go to war with another country. That this anger arises from the mind, and if one can realize the emptiness of the mind, the emptiness of the anger, then there's no basis for war fighting. And some wars come through people thinking, I'm the greatest in the world, and I should rule the whole world. I should all the other countries under my power. And if there was no pride, then there wouldn't be any of that fighting, any of that war. A country thinks we are a very a great country, very special country, and now this other country is developing and might become as good, is getting as good as us. So we've got to put that to a stop and eliminate it. So there's that envy, and so from the feeling of envy that war arises. So if one can practice to gain an understanding of the nature of the mind, then there won't be this, the external fighting of in the world, and there won't be the intermediate level of fighting, which is inside the one's own family, and there won't be the inner fighting or war where there's in one's mind so much this negativity arising and all kinds of thoughts. There's a lot of trouble and in one's mind. So this also will not arise, but one will be in a state of peace and happiness. And so there are many teachings given within the Buddha's teachings on and wisdom and emptiness, compassion, on shamatha meditation, vipassana meditation, the visualization stage of practice, and the completion stage or phase of practice. So there are many teachings, and so all of these practiced, developed on the basis of this understanding of the nature of the mind. So the Buddha was originally just an ordinary being who became a Buddha. So first, as an ordinary being, that they heard briefly this, or vaguely, this nature of things and of the mind. And so then, in order to get more than just a vague understanding, that they studied, learned, and practiced meditation and gathering accumulation of good karma and so on, and gradually then developing up through all the 10 levels of bodhisattva. And so on this 10th level of the bodhisattva, and all of the bad karma, obscurations, all of the dullness or darkness of the mind completely eliminated or cleared away, and all the positive qualities and ultimate wisdom appear or blossom. And so the two words for this thing of being cleared away and pured away is in Tibetan is song, and for this completely developed and blossomed is je, and these two, song je is the Tibetan for Buddha, which has these two meanings to that word of being completely awakened and developed. So some people think that when one has achieved a state of Buddhahood, then it's just like a nothingness, like space. There's no good, no bad. There's just a state of nothingness. But it's not like that. That when we achieve Buddhahood, on the impure level, we have body, speech, and mind. And so when we attain the state of Buddhahood, then that becomes the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nimanakaya. So the Dharmakaya is like this, like the mind. The Sambhogakaya is like the speech, and the Nimanakaya is the body. And in the Buddha's mind, there's the qualities of understanding of emptiness and of bliss and changelessness. There's like 21 like excellent qualities. And the Buddha is able to be aware of all things, past, present, and future, as clearly as we'd be aware of having an object in our hand. And he has 32 qualities like this. And for his speech, that Kalu Rinpoche says that, for example, if he were the Buddha, and you were all, thousands of you here from all over the world, and you all knew your own different, on your own different language, speak your own different language from your own different countries, then through just saying one thing once, that would be understood by everybody in their own language. And so the Buddha's speech has 60 qualities like that. And the Buddha's body, that this has its own very particular qualities, has 32 principal physical signs and 80 lesser physical signs, altogether 120 special qualities of the Buddha's body. And so for us as ordinary beings, it's said that we have 84,000 different types of negativity in our mind, and for that reason that the Buddha gave 84,000 different kinds of Dharma teaching. And so this teaching is called the Dharma, or the jewel of the Dharma. Then from the first level of the Bodhisattva onwards, there is realization of the nature of one's mind. And so all the beings from first level to the 10th level of Bodhisattvas, they are called the Arya Sangha. But even if someone isn't on these bodhisattva levels, that if it's someone who has compassion, love and compassion for beings, and is practicing the Dharma in order to help others, and is teaching others in order to help them, then they are the Sangha of ordinary beings. And so then, so one has the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha. So these are what are called the three jewels. And these three jewels, they have the great qualities. They have the qualities of wisdom, of the mind, and of love and activity. Oh, and the power to protect or give refuge to others. So we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha to begin with, and the reason why we do that is because we are we are in samsara, in the sufferings of samsara, and through our own power we're not able to get out. But the one who has the power to bring one out is these three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. So that is why we turn to them or take refuge in them for our liberation from samsara. And so one takes refuge in the Buddha and Dharma Sangha with great trust in them and devotion, and saying that one is requesting this refuge or help from now until one has achieved Buddhahood, for their leading one out from the suffering of samsara to liberation. So the way they're able to do this, to give one this refuge, free one from samsara, is that they have this like compassion and power, which is like a hook. But we have to have this trust or faith, because if one has this trust or faith in them, then this is like a ring, and then the hook of their compassion and power will be able to hook onto the ring, and then be able to lead us out from samsara. If one doesn't have this faith or trust, then the three jewels will not be able to liberate us. It's like if one has an iron ball, and if there's an iron ball, if somebody tries to pull that with a hook, there's no way they can do it. There's nothing to hold on to. Whereas if it's a ring, then the hook can immediately catch hold onto to it and take it away. So, so in brief, for example, that if one wants to get from Scotland to London, and one doesn't have a car, then one stands at the edge of the road and one puts one's thumb out, and so on. So for asking for the help or refuge assistance of a car, and so if a car stops, then we can get into it, and the car will take us all the way down to London. But one might say, well, if one is taking refuge, there's nothing one can see that one is taking refuge in, that one is like praying to, or one can't see anything looking at one with compassion and so on. But this refuge occurs through this interdependence with the compassion of the Buddha. And so this interdependence is like if you have a car. If you are taking a car to be there's this thing for washing the car, and when you arrive, when the car starts arriving there, then it naturally begins to turn by itself as you get there. There's no and it's like that. There's this interdependence. It just naturally occurs. That in brief, that the taking of refuge is like the root of all Dharma practice, that if one has this refuge commitment, then one can receive any of the empowerments or instructions and so on of any of the Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana teachings in the Dharma. But that without this refuge commitment, then none of these teachings will be of any benefit to one, because the Buddha said that even if one takes all vows, that without the refuge vow, one doesn't really have any. And so the Buddha said that if one can keep this refuge commitment without breaking it, then one won't be reborn in the three lower existences. So this is something very definite. And not only that, but through the power of this commitment, one will gradually proceed along the path of liberation to Buddhahood. So this refuge commitment is something with very great benefit. So some people say that once one has taken refuge, then one is a Buddhist, and then one can't follow any other religion. One has to give them all up. But this is a mistake, because there are all these different religions, that there are something there to benefit beings. And the Buddha himself said that many hundreds of religions will appear in the world, and they're all like his activity or his manifestations in order to benefit beings. And so one can follow and practice any other religion.
송해지도 자는다면 그문지가 주님께마다 대반적으로 대적으로 본거 말이스 이때가 저하고 다 갈라가지나 대라적으로 본거 말이스 대세다 얘는 폐차 내가 가는 데밖에 살없다 말이스.
And so if there's somebody who takes this refuge commitment or keeps this refuge commitment, if they're also in another religion, they can also follow that, practice that religion. They don't have to give it up. And also whatever activity they're doing in the world, they don't have to give that up either. They can just carry on exactly the same. So the refuge commitment is something which is like very easy. Doesn't involve anything dangerous. And it is something very beneficial. So if anyone here has already taken this refuge, then whatever Lama one has taken it from, then it's the same. Then one has got the refuge. The benefit is the same no matter what Lama one receives one's refuge from. Then tomorrow there's Vajravarahi or Dojipamo empowerment. And so one isn't able to receive this empowerment without taking the refuge commitment. So if there's anybody who wants to take this refuge, they will be able to do that tomorrow. And this refuge commitment will be before the empowerment. And but if there's anyone here who thinks they can't do this tomorrow, they can't take refuge or take the empowerment, then it doesn't matter. That in the future, at another time, from another lama or from a tuku, they can take this refuge, and it'll be something that'll be of very great benefit to them. So Kalu Rinpoche has given a brief description about the nature of the Dharma. He's been practicing or studying Dharma all his life up to his present age, up to the age 83, and so he could give quite a lot of teachings, very detailed teachings for a long time, but there isn't the time. And but anyway, that in the future that one can carry on studying with any lamas and so on, studying and practicing from any lama in the centers. And if one can do that, this is something that will be of very great benefit for oneself, for this life and the next life. And Kalu Rinpoche knows that you're very busy, you have a lot of work to do, and also a lot of work watching movies and television. But he's taken a long time of this teaching, so he gives his apologies. Kalu Rinpoche says he's been very happy to have this Dharma connection with you, and he'll make a wishing prayer that you'll be for your happiness and present and future, and now he'll make a dedication prayer, dedicating all the good karma from this for that all beings may attain happiness and liberation.